Watch Mr. Wizard. That's what all the kids in the neighborhood call him because he shows them the magic and the mystery of science in everyday living.
Hi, Mr. Wizard.
Oh, hi, Rita. Come on in. Come over here. And this may not look like it, but this is a stopwatch.
Stopwatch?
You know, that they use to time races and
Yeah.
things? Well, that's what this is. Only happens to be one that's very accurate and very fast. And here I'm starting the stopwatch. See it go?
Sure goes fast.
And by pushing this other switch, I can stop it.
Mm-hmm.
So, this means I can time my reaction. If you will push on this switch,
This one?
yes, as soon as I see the lights go, I'll push the one to stop it, and you can time and see how fast my reaction is. This,
All
by
right.
the way, is in thousandth of a second. Thousandth of a second. So you go ahead.
Okay.
You start it. You go ahead and start it. And see, I can stop it by pushing this one. You get the idea?
Okay.
Okay. Ready?
204.
204 thousandth of a second. Try it again. Oh, wait a minute. Wait until I'm ready now. All right. 195. 210.
133.
Okay, remember I was about 200 or so, 195, 233, something like that. Later on, I want to see how fast you are, and I'll see if you're any faster than I am.
I hope I am.
Because today, you and I are going to investigate the various methods that man has devised for keeping time. But before we get into that, I have a very serious problem.
Problem?
Has nothing to do with time at all. I think you will think it doesn't, but it really does. You see my new desk over here?
Yes, very nice.
Well, I would like to know how long it is.
A problem?
Yes.
Just measure it.
Well, all right, go ahead. You'll see that it's not as easy as you think. I'll hold the tape measure here on this end, and you go ahead and measure. What does it say?
Well, it says 40,
50.
57.
57 what?
57 inches.
57 inches?
Mhm.
Well, that's the thing that's the problem, because I didn't get that answer.
Well, what do you mean? It's 57.
Well, here's the one I used. Try that one. I'll hold the one in here just like you did before.
58 and 4.
Well, now, which is it?
50.
See what I mean? I told you that I had a problem. I don't know how long the
It has to be
desk
the
is.
wrong size.
What? How
The
long
tape
is the
measures.
desk? That's my problem. It's a very simple question. Is it 58
that.
or 57?
These are wrong tape measures.
Why?
One of them has to be right, but one of them is wrong because, look, one's short and the other's long.
Yeah, well, now, what's the matter with that?
Well,
So
there's
one
two
happens to be
different-
short, the other happens to be long, that's all.
So which one is it? 57 or 58?
Well, that's what I want you to tell me. That's why I said
I don't know which one is the
I
right
told you I
tape
had a
measure.
serious problem, and you said, what's the problem? And I showed you said, that's simple. And yet now when I ask you how long the desk is, you can't even tell me.
Well, whatever tape measure you want to use, then I'll tell you how much it is.
What I did is I took one of these and put it in boiling water and boiled it so it shrank.
It shrank?
Yeah, so that one of them is too short, so obviously the desk is really 58 and a quarter. Now, the reason I did that is I wanted you to realize that whenever you measure anything, lengths, widths, heights, that you must have a unit that is reliable, right? The minute you have one that's unreliable, you have no idea what you're measuring.
Like an inch. It has to be all the
It
same
has
inch.
to be
or
an
else
inch.
everybody has
Okay,
an
now-
inch this
now
big. And
The same thing is true in time. That if you're going to measure the time of something, that you must have very reliable intervals. Okay, now let's measure time. First of all, what are we measuring? When we're measuring the length of the table, you know what it is. Well, what are we measuring when we measure time?
well, remember last time I came over,
What?
we had meaning of words? Well, we
Mhm.
had time.
What was
and
time?
You said it was the interval of the space between 2 points.
Like one end of the table and the other?
Yes. Well, that's not time. Like supposing between when I came in and now. Between that is time.
Ah, very good. So in spite of the fact that we can't define it, we can describe it as the period between two events.
Mm-hmm.
Between now and now, in between there, that's time.
That's time, right.
Now, to measure that interval, just like the length of the table, we have to have some units. And man has devised various yardsticks or inches or rulers or something to measure these intervals. I am going to present to you the various rulers, the yardsticks, and you have to tell me how we measure time with them. All right?
All right.
First one is right behind you there.
Where else?
So you see if you can figure out if I give you an extra special clue. Wait, I'm going to turn on this light over here. You look at the globe now because here's the clue.
Oh, day and night, right?
Yes. Day and night. The Earth's turning like this is the regular interval, right? In other words, this is our yardstick now. Our inch
Okay.
is the Earth turning. And what does it measure?
Well, over here is day,
Mm-hmm.
and here's night.
Over there's
So
night.
Living over there
Okay.
in bed.
So you see, yeah, over here they're in bed,
Yeah.
and I have a little piece of clay marked on. That's the Empire State Building. Let's see, am I going on the right way? No. No, going the wrong way. This way. So you get the idea now. This is the interval. The yardstick is the day and night. And can you think of any other units of time, like yardsticks or inches and so forth, that are based on movement of heavenly bodies?
Well, I guess a year, a month,
What's a year?
days. Well, it's a certain period of time
The time that it
Yes.
takes the Earth
to rotate.
go around the sun.
Oh, revolution.
Okay. Then how about a month? What's that?
A month is a certain period of time, too.
Of the moon going around the
Yeah.
Earth. Okay, now, let me turn this thing off again.
There's the sun.
Now, you get the idea? This is the thing that oscillates or vibrates back and forth that is going to tick off certain periods of time.
All
Okay,
right.
here's the next one. You stand right there like that, but move lug out so I can get this out of the way because it's hot. You stand right there and don't look around.
I won't. Where did that come from?
Well, I have it hung from the ceiling. Because this,
Beautiful.
isn't that beautiful though? This is the
In the lab?
well, it doesn't really belong here, but I'm just using it because I want to try to reconstruct the experiment that gave us the next time period. You've heard of Mr. Galileo? He was the man who was supposed to lean out the tower and drop the balls and things. Well, he was kind of one of the first scientists. And here's the story of what happened to him and how clocks resulted from it. He was supposed to be sitting in church one day when the man who went around and lit all the candles in the candelabra at that time, no candles this one, but the man lit them, and after he finished lighting them, he just sort of let go. He didn't steady it, so that the candelabra started to swing this way.
Back and forth.
So Galileo, being a scientist, one of the first, was looking up at this chandelier swinging back and forth, and he decided that he would time it. So he used his pulse, he put his fingers on his pulse like this, and he timed it. 1, 2, let's start from this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he timed it, in the beginning. Then later on, I don't know how many, nobody knows how many times he timed it, but later on when the chandelier was hardly moving at all, just barely swinging, he timed it again, and what did he find?
Oh,
1,
that's the same.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In spite of the fact that it's just going a little tiny bit, it took the same time. So this got him very excited, according to the story, and he ran home and he did all kinds of experiments using a water clock, and what did he find?
Oh, isn't that like a pendulum?
Yes.
That's right, because it goes back and forth. And, when you
This-
said that,
yes.
then he said that it goes the same period of time, when it goes little, when you
Mhm.
count. That's just like the pendulum. The longer it is, it takes a longer time to go.
Right. So you
Back
can.
and forth.
So the thing that's vibrating back and forth now, the yardstick or the inches or the ruler, is the pendulum. And what is it that controls it's how long it goes back and forth?
Oh, the length of it.
Okay. And how do we use that?
Well, tell time, the clock.
Okay. There's one right there. Find the pendulum. That'll be very difficult, I'm sure.
Oh, very difficult. Oh, I
There's the pendulum.
Right there.
And now, in order to run a clock from it, you're going to have to somehow regulate the length of the pendulum. Can you find out how this is regulated in there?
Well, I've never seen one, but...
Well, either you have to add a weight down at the bottom here, or you could make it longer, but like making a longer string, right? So look here. Look right up here at the top.
That little
You see
round
right up there,
thing?
there's a little
Yeah.
wheel.
Uh-huh.
Well, that little wheel you can turn. Now, let's see. When you turn that little wheel, that lowers this whole thing right here, see?
Yeah.
This stays stationary, however, and there's a slot in it, so that spring that goes up and down, that's vibrating back and forth there, either gets longer or shorter, depending on where you adjust the wheel. So really, this is getting longer. And when that gets longer, what happens to the period of the pendulum?
Well, it takes a longer amount of time to go back and forth. It has a longer time.
So if the clock is gaining, what do you do?
Well, if you want it to go shorter, you put it, shorter.
Shorter.
If you want to make
If the clock is going too fast, you would make it longer. And you
Yes.
would let the thing. Okay, now,
You control it yourself, yeah.
there's the idea now. You get understand now? So I'm going to give you the clue of what it was vibrating, what's oscillating, how can we use it, what are the frequencies, how do you change it, and then you have to tell me how we use it. Okay, that was a pretty easy one. Now we're going to get more difficult. I'll warn you.
Oh, that's a hacksaw blade.
Yes.
Oh, that's like the pendulum. You know,
Well, except it's going
yeah,
pointing
sure.
up.
You know, this is longer, and it takes, this longer arc
And how do you
to
change
go.
it?
Well, if this was shorter, like this, see how, it
Oh,
just
wait,
goes
here,
little.
wait.
Can you shorten it? Watch. See how it goes very fast, but a little steady.
Now try.
Oh,
Very short.
sure does.
And now try.
See how?
Takes a long time to
Yeah.
go. Now, this is not exactly like a pendulum in that the pendulum depends on gravity.
Yes.
And of course,
goes
you can
down,
do
that
and
goes
this
up.
is, and it, well, in this you can do it on the side. You can do it in any position. But now, can't we make a clock out of that?
Well, sure it can, if it goes back and forth.
You could have it push something. Well, but this is long, and that's one of the troubles with pendulum clocks. Is usually they're fairly big. If you want to make a small clock and you have a small pendulum, then the pendulum goes real fast. So
Make that smaller.
why not do this? Can you see any similarities between these two?
Yes, that's going back and forth just like this is.
Yeah. But
And this over here. Isn't this not like this, the hacksaw blade?
yes,
I
it's
mean,
made of
this is,
steel.
when you move that vibrates and goes back and forth. This
That's right.
goes back and forth, hacksaw blade.
So this is kind of like a wound-up hacksaw blade. It's
Yeah.
really a spring.
And
It's-
keeps on letting this go back and forth.
So that how do you suppose you change the period of this?
Well, if you want to make this either longer or shorter, like this.
Right. If you pull this and made it
Yeah.
shorter, it would go on a faster rate. Okay. So now we have something else that is beating off little periods of time, and all we have to do is combine it in a clock of some kind, and we'd be all set.
Yeah,
All right,
our
here-
own clock.
Here's the clock. See if you can find such a device there.
There it is, right there. See the spring going up and down, just like that.
Where?
Right there.
Here. Take my pencil and you
Oh,
point to it.
all right. Right there. And
There.
that's moving.
Wait.
a
Let
little-
me stop the thing first.
Okay.
So, hold a minute. There.
See, that spring over there.
That's right. That spring
Just
right
like
there.
that.
Just
And
like
it-
that spring.
When it moved before, that was going up and down.
Okay, now I'll start it.
Did you notice that moves this, that wheel, and the wheel moves this notch?
I don't
and
understand. Wait, now, that moves this. What are you
Yeah,
talking
this-
about?
This wheel over here.
That spring
Yes.
determines the period or the how fast this wheel will go back and forth, right? If you make the spring shorter, it would go faster.
Yeah,
okay.
just like this
Right.
point over here.
Then what?
Oh, then it goes on to this,
Well, I
like
think
a little notch, and it keeps on going and going, and
I
this
think
connects to this,
for our
just like the
pur-
body.
for our
This
purposes
bone's connected to that bone.
for our purposes today, I think we can just say that little spring there controls the mechanism of the whole clock.
It sure does.
And if you want it to go faster, why, you just make the spring shorter. And if you want it to be longer, take a longer interval, why, you make the spring longer. Okay. Well, now, we have different kinds of clocks. Some of them are pendulums, some of them have a spring in here, but then there's a different kind of clock entirely. And I'm going to see if I can give you a much more difficult clue now. Come on. And see if you can guess what kind of clock it's used in. Remember I told you about this electronic stopwatch?
Yes. It's awfully big. Like a little watch is better.
Now here is a speaker, see it? And I can take the speaker and plug it into the connector here like this. Now I'll turn on the current down here. Let me get this out of the way. And I want you to notice what happens.
It goes bouncing. You hear a noise.
And see that speaker?
Yes.
It's really making a noise, and I just wanted you to realize that it was vibrating by putting this ball in there. See that?
It's bouncing just like popcorn. You ever see
Yeah.
that?
And notice that the timer, I have it set so that it goes on and off. Let me turn this down a little bit so we don't have so much noise. I have it set so that once every second, it counts the number of pulses that I'm putting into it. Notice what it reads here?
It's 60.
I'll move it so it counts a little faster. It's counting seconds now. Now watch.
What's a fix, does it? It's 23.
turn up the...
The ball would go right out of it.
Now notice that this is... Doesn't this give you some kind of a clue as to what kind of a clock we... Remember how we had the spring and it would go back and forth and vibrate?
Yeah.
How we had the pendulum, it went back and forth and vibrated. Here's something vibrating too, see it?
60.
Yeah.
60 seconds.
And it's going 60 times. This counter is counting, and it's going 60 times a second.
And 60 seconds in a minute.
Well-
Does that have some relationship to that?
Well, yes, it does. Don't you see how we could now use a clock based on this kind of thing? And don't you know of some kind of clock that we plug in?
Oh, sure, an electric clock.
Yes.
I had one of them. You
Here's
have
an
to
elec-
wind them up all the time.
Yeah, and here's an electric clock right here. And the mechanism, the hairspring, or the thing that we saw,
Oh,
the thing
that's the one that vibrated up and down.
is coming right from here, from the 60 cycle current, the alternating current. That's what's vibrating and keeping this clock in step. And every day, in the middle of the night, as a matter of fact, the electric company adjusts it so that you have exactly 60 beats every second for the entire day.
Yeah, so that machine is
This machine
measuring
is-
how many
Right.
times that's going back and
Right.
forth the current.
So here's another vibrating
Nice.
device. Yes. Now with this electronic stopwatch, we can measure other frequencies also. In other words, we're measuring 60 times a second. You see that?
Yeah.
This time, you remember the tuning forks also vibrate. Let's try and see what happens when we measure a tuning fork. Would you put that underneath there for me?
Oh, sure.
Now here is a tuning fork which we can make a sound. And I can take this microphone and put it right here at the end of it, you see. So I can get the sound of the tuning fork to go into this microphone. I have it going down, the sound going down here to an amplifier. And now I'll connect the speaker part of the amplifier up here to the electronic counter again.
So this sound is going all the way through into that.
And it's
to that
finally
machine.
going into this machine right here. In fact, as we're talking now, the microphone is picking up various frequencies as we talk and counting how many frequencies there are in each second.
Yes, it's changing. As
See
we
how it's
talk.
changing?
26, 21.
Now, I'll put it down here. Let's stop talking, and I'll now vibrate the tuning fork, and this will now count the number of vibrations that the tuning fork vibrates in 1 second. Watch. What's it read?
256. Now 255. 56. Well, why does it go, 55 and 56?
Well, I have an idea that this tuning fork is not absolutely perfect, and that sometimes it might vibrate, or it might be vibrating 255.5. But this counter will only read 256 or 255, so sometimes it reads one and sometimes the other. And notice it keeps track, and as we're talking, it's counting the vibrations every second too.
Yeah.
Now watch, let's try it again.
Here it is again. 256. That's going 256 times.
Right. In fact, look, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I put some pencil markings on here, but you see the numbers down there?
256.
At the bottom there, right? As I say, I put some pencil marks on there so that you can see it better, but there's 256 right on the tuning fork.
They're telling the truth. We saw it on the machine.
Try to wipe them off so you can see it better. 256. So that the machine and the numbers that the scientists put on there when they made the tuning fork agree.
You're right.
In fact, they could have used a device something like this when they manufactured it. Well, now you can see if this is vibrating back and forth, if we could use alternating current vibrating back and forth, if we could use a pendulum vibrating back and forth, if we use a spring vibrating back and forth, we could use this vibrating back and forth in a clock.
I sure it could, I guess so,
Well,
because it's vibrating.
It's vibrating, and
picks
here's...
it up.
Be careful that you don't pull all any of the cords, because here's a clock that's based on that very principle right here. This may not look like it, but this is a little tuning fork.
Oh, it looks
Yeah?
a little bit like it. The 2 points.
With the 2 points
The
up here, but
fork.
the difference is that this one has a couple of cups at the top, but that can vibrate back and forth in this direction. Now, that vibrates back and forth inside of this little container here, and those coils that you see on the top fit into those little cups in the end of the tuning fork. Now, in order to get it to vibrate, instead of plucking it like I did over there, the people who designed this watch have a little current, a little electricity, and here's the battery.
Oh, and
it
that
runs on.
battery
Yeah.
keeps the little tuning fork
Well,
vibrating.
the battery supplies current to these coils, and the coils keep this going, and they also keep it on time. Now, if you look inside here, I think maybe you'll see the parts. You see
Yes.
the tuning fork is on its side there, and here are the
Yeah.
two coils. They're vibrating up and down like this so fast that you can't see them. And, of course, then there's a mechanism, a little wheel and little ratchets that finally get the whole mechanism working and finally get the clock to go. So here is a clock now.
With the tuning fork.
The tuning fork, that's right. Now, there are other methods of getting things to vibrate also. For instance, if you take electricity, instead of putting it into a coil, put it on certain kinds of crystals. You can get the crystals to vibrate, and very, very fast. Thousands of times a second, even millions of times a second.
Really?
Yes.
It's so unbelievable.
It doesn't seem? Well,
believe it.
but we can now have a clock mechanism based on the fact that this crystal will vibrate so fast. In fact, that's the clock we were using.
A millionth of a second?
Yes. This timing device here actually will go up to a millionth of a second, and before you leave today, we're going to time your reaction in a millionth of a second. But first, let's
fast for me.
inside here now is a crystal, and by adjusting these various controls, you can get the crystal to vibrate at various frequencies. In effect, it vibrates at one frequency, but you can get out various frequencies from it. So with it now, we can time things very, very accurately. I'll set it on 1,000th of a second, and let's see how fast your reaction time was. Do you remember what mine was? About 200?
200.
About
yes.
200. All right, we'll see how fast you are. You know how fast you are on the draw? That sort of thing. All right, let's see. Now, here are these two things. Down below is a battery, so we're running current up here. We can plug this into here like this. We set this over here now so that we're going to time the interval that it takes to, from the time the thing starts until the time that it stops. All right?
All right. Oh, I hope I do better than you.
Well, you're younger than I am, so you should. In fact, if you don't, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Don't worry, I will.
You think so?
Oh, sure.
Now, let's see if...
233 is a lot.
Okay, there, you see that? Now, as long as I hold it down, it's going to be counting, and we're counting in thousandths of a second. That's
It's going
7,000...
so fast, I can hardly see it.
This is in seconds, this is tenths, hundreds, and this is thousands. Now, so, when I push this button, I start it. I stop it, I mean. Now, when I push my button up here, I will start it, and you push your button over there.
It stops.
It stops automatically. Okay, now let me try it again. Now you push yours.
All right,
Get
stop.
the idea? All right. Now this time I'm going to start it, and don't you look at my finger. You look up here at the lights, because what we want to time is the time that it takes the light from this thing to go up and, hit you in the eye, go up to your brain. Your brain sends a message to your muscle, push, your muscle moves, pushes. Okay? And we'll time it now in thousandths of a second. Keep your eye on the light. Okay, you're pushing. This is very sensitive. If you just touch it, it'll stop. So don't you touch it. Ready? 186. What did I have? 200. All right, pretty good.
Oh.
All right, wait. Let's try it again. All right, wait a minute now. Wait, that was only one trial. Ha 211. See?
So you had 200 too. Let's try once more. Come on.
You're pushing.
All right. And we'll...
Wait a minute, are you still pushing?
No,
Let me
I
see.
was
Well,
open.
let's see what's happening. There it goes. Okay, now let's go again. Go, you're pushing.
You
Come
push
on.
down.
Oh, but you look at the light. Don't look at my
All right.
finger. There, you see?
500. Oh.
All right, now this time, let's do it properly. 380. 433.
212. There.
241. Come on. Yeah, there you beat me. 184. Hey, 135.
Five.
Oh, now you're getting onto it. 177. There you're beating me every time. Oh, very
49.
good. 149. I'm going to wait a long time this time and not let you know when I'm going to push it at all. Oh, I couldn't fool her. 144. 172.
Good game.
See?
You put it out.
Well, what we are really doing is timing the interval that it takes for you to see it, and your muscles
Yeah,
to
we'll
move,
go
and it's
all the way through.
172 thousandth of a second. 172 thousandth of a second. That's quite a bit, yes. Now,
Hi,
and the,
circle on the drawer.
the reason we can do this is because inside a crystal is vibrating back and forth at extremely high speed. Well, now, let's set up a known frequency in here. 1,000th of a second. 1,000 times a second we're going to count. Here is a machine like the tuning fork, but it's electronic instead. Hear that?
Yes.
If we put this in here like this, what does it read? 992. That's 8 cycles off in 1,000. That's pretty close, isn't it? And if I wanted to, I could adjust this so that it would come out exactly on 1,000. Now, what we are doing here is counting the number of cycles, or the times the current goes up and down, in 1 second, and you can see that it's 992.
So this current in there is going up and down, and you're counting it.
Yeah, and we're counting.
That's fast.
Now, let me explain what we're going to
I
do.
thought a second was fast.
You thought a second was fast. Now we're going to count something that takes place in millionths of a second. Now let me explain what we're going to do. Come on over here to my pad. We have an electric current going into that meter that's going up and down like this. See? Alternating current, but it's going down 1,000 times. If this were 1 second from here to here, we would have 1,000 of these bumps.
Yeah.
And we are just got finished counting. But you see that bump right there?
Yes.
This time, we're only going to count when it goes from 1 volt here to 1 volt here. Just that little part of it, so it's got to be much less than 1,000th of a second. Come on, let's set it up over here and you'll see. Now, we have 1,000 cycles coming out of there. There. When I push it, it clears it. You see that? Now when I let go, it's going to count the first time we get that 1 volt, and watch. We are now reading 162 millionths of a second. So you
That's
see,
just that little.
right. So you have all kinds of measuring devices, from pendulums going once a second to here a crystal vibrating 160 or in millionths of a second, and there is 162 millionths of a second.
No wonder they go so fast.
Watch Mr. Wizard is presented each week at this time by the Public Affairs Department of the NBC Television Network in cooperation with New York University.